Okay, people, we are on to compound interest. Welcome here. Hopefully you've just watched the video or at least heard me talk live of what simple interest is. Now we're talking compound interest, and this is a lot more exciting. Okay, so the first thing you have to do in order to understand how to use this formula is to memorize these words. You have to know that annually means once a year, semi-annually twice a year. Quarterly, think of how many quarters are in a dollar, 4 times a year. Monthly, 12 times a year. You already knew that, okay? Weekly, well, just like a deck of cards, 52. 52 times per year for weekly. There are 52 weeks in a year. Daily is 365 times a year, okay? By the way, if they ever use the word bi-weekly, that means every second week. So every second week, what you would do is divide the 52 in half, cut it in half. So if they ever say bi-weekly, that means 26 times a year. I notice that's not on this list, and sometimes it shows up. Okay? I suppose there's other words that sometimes show up as well, like semi-monthly. Semi-monthly means twice a month. So you just twice a month, so it would be 24 times a year instead of 12 times a year. You can push pause right now and just memorize this if you want. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next explanation. So when you're ready, push play. Okay, so here we are. Here it is, the compound interest formula. I'm going to walk you through what each of these things means, and then we're going to practice using it. Okay, so here it is. The first thing is, this is called the future value. This is what your money will be worth altogether in the future. Okay, FV. In the past, this has just been called A for the amount. Okay, the future amount, A. Now, I've decided to put it to FV because your graphing calculator uses FV on it, and so we want to be consistent with that. Okay, I want it to match up with what you do on the graphing calculator. Okay, the next one's called PV, or present value, and that is how much money you start with. Okay, how much money you have right now in the present. And by the way, this formula used to be, I'll just show you what the formula used to look like, okay, just so that you're aware of what I'm talking about here. The formula normally looks like this. A is equal to P 1 plus I to the exponent n. So PV is present value, but it really meant principal, okay? It's what we had in remember the simple interest that we did before? I equals PRT? Well, P was still principal. It's just the money that you have in the beginning, okay? So I just wanted to mention that before we move on. Okay, so future value, present value, and now the I is talking about interest, okay? Now, it's not as easy as the simple interest formula. What you do to figure out what belongs where the I is, what you do is you read the question, and the question will say something like 6% interest compounded semi-annually. So you go, okay, 6% interest. Change that into a decimal, so you get 0.06. But then it says to divide by the word. Now, the reason why this word is here, the word is talking about that word semi-annually. Okay? It's one of those words you had to memorize on the first page that we looked at, okay? Semi-annually is twice a year, okay? So what you do is you divide 0.06 divided by 2, okay? So let's pretend this is a whole year right here. This block is a whole year. The word cuts up the year into however many chunks. If they say semi-annually, then the year is cut up into 2 chunks. You take the 6% and it goes there and it goes there. So you divide it in half. Okay? If the year is, if they say monthly, you take the 6% that I just talked about and you divide it up into 12 chunks. So you divide by 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you get 12 chunks, and the 6% has to go into all those chunks, okay? Whenever they give you the percent, it's always going to be, they might say like this, 6% per year, or they might say P dot A. That means per annum. Same thing, per year. and you're just cutting it up into chunks. So divide by the word. If the word is monthly, divide this by 12. If it's weekly, take 6% and divide by 52. Okay? Heck, if it said daily interest, if it said compounded daily, you would take 6% and divide by 365. Okay? So the I part is one of the parts that's a little trickier. You can't just take the percent and throw it in there. You have to take the percent and divide by the word. Okay? So if you forget everything else I just said, take the percent, change it into a decimal, then divide by the special word. Okay. The last one is n. N is the number of compounding periods. Okay, it's not the number of years like you might think. Okay, so what you do is you take the years. So if they say compounded semi-annually for 10 years, well, semi-annually, isn't semi-annually twice a year? So you put a 2 there underneath the word. Semi-annually is 2. And the years is, let's say, 10 years. So n is going to be 20. There will be 20 compounding periods that we would write right in there. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. I'll just do one more example. If they said compounded monthly for 5 years, so monthly for 5 years, well, 5 years, and you're going to times that by monthly is the word used. So monthly is 12 times a year. So n is going to be 60. Okay? The I and the n are the only parts that take a little extra thinking, okay? The I, you take the percent and you divide by the word. So if it's semi-annually, you divide by 2. And the n, you take the years and you times by the word, which means you would, if it was semi-annually, you would times by 2. Okay, well, let's practice this and see. Sometimes practicing it is the most important. So here's an overview of everything. You can push pause if you want to look at this. But here's a question. All right, and when you do these questions, it's a good idea to write down the formula. You should write this formula down every time you do one so that you don't get things all mixed up. So in my case, I don't have enough room here, so I'm just going to write FV. The future value is, okay, let's read the question. $1,000 is invested. As soon as you see money, put it right there. $1,000 is invested at 3% per year. Okay, bracket 1 plus 3% per year compounded monthly. Now be careful. You don't just write 0.03 here. You can't just go 0.03 and say you're done. Okay? You have to take 0.03 and you're dividing by the word. Well, what's the word? Well, compounded monthly. So you're dividing by 12. Okay? So you take your calculator. You turn it on. There we go. And you go 0.03 divided by 12. And you get 0.025. Okay, and that's the number I'm going to write. So I'm going to put 0.025 right there. Okay? And by the way, if it was a really long decimal here, you could just round it off if you wanted to. The longer the decimal, the better. The more decimal places you leave, the better. But if you have no choice, it's okay to round off. You know, give yourself at least 3 or 4 decimal places here so that the answer isn't too far off. But it's okay to round if it's super, super long. All right? Okay, last thing to do is the n part. The n part is you take the years, it says 5 years, and you times it by the word. Well, remember, these two numbers will always be the same. When you do the I part, you'll have the 12, but you'll be dividing by 12. When you have the n part, you'll be multiplying by 12. Okay? Well, 5 times 12 is 60. So up here, we're going to have 60. Okay? If you're using a regular calculator to do this, then what you would do is you just do the brackets first, just like BEDMAS. So you do this first. You get 1.025. Notice that's a growth decimal. If you remember exponents, you'll remember that this is going to grow kind of like this on a graph. It's going to grow. Okay? So 1.025. Then you go exponent 60 on your calculator, push equals. Then multiply by 1,000, which was our present value or our principal. Okay, here we go. It says invest $12,000 at 12% PA. That means per annum or per year, compounded semi-annually for 2 years. All right, so let's do that. So FV is equal to, we want to know the future value. So you write $2,000. Okay, 1 plus. Now the I, be careful. Remember, I'll do the I over here. Take 12%, change it into a decimal, and we divide by the word. Well, what is the word? Semi-annually. Well, that's the same word we had before. So 0.12 divided by 2. You can do it in your head even if you wanted to. It's 0.06. And if you don't believe me, watch. 0.12 divided by 2, 0.06 or 0.06. Okay, now the n part up here is the number of years, so 2 years, times that by the word. The word is semi-annually, which is 2. That's 4. I guess the word is different than the previous question. The previous question was, the word was monthly. Okay, so that is different, sorry. And anyway, type this in on your calculator. If you don't have a graphing calculator, you can just go 1.06 to the exponent 4, then multiply by 2,000. I'm going to do it all at once here on the graphing calculator just to speed things up. 1.06 to the exponent 4. How much money do we have altogether? 2524, 95. 2524, 95. That's how much money we had altogether. How much did you make in interest? How much money did you make in interest? Well, you take this number minus how much money you already had in your own pocket, and then you would see that it's $524.95. Let's keep going because I think I have 2 more questions. Okay, so you invest $10,000 at 12% compounded quarterly for 1 year. All right, let's do it really fast. I'm starting to go quicker because I know that these videos can get a little long. Okay, 12% per year. What are we going to divide by? That's right, we're going to divide by the word quarterly. So we're going to go 0.12 divided by quarterly, which is 4. You get 0.03. Okay, n is going to be the number of years, 1 year, and times that by the word, which is 4. Well, that's easy. 1 times 4. It's going to happen 4 times in that 1 year. All right, let's figure out the final value or the future value. Here we go. It was $10,000, I believe. Okay, plus, sorry, not plus, times 1.03 bracket exponent 4. Here we go. The future value, whoops, the future value is $11,255. $11,255. And did you catch the cents? No, that makes no sense. No, just kidding. 0.09. Okay, that is how much money you will have in the future. If they said, what's the interest? Well, subtract 10,000. It would be $1,255.09 interest.